Welcome back to the Scotti-BYTE channel, and this is Scott. So today's discussion is going to be about VPNs. And so often VPNs are used to connect out to a public VPN for the purposes of geolocation. But VPNs also have a predominant use case for accessing your home lab when you're outside of your network. And so I've entitled today's presentation, Ubiquiti Unifi VPN Servers and the Zone-Based Firewall. And so the Zone-Based Firewall is something that we covered here recently, and I encourage you to go back and take a look at those videos. So the general idea for the purposes of today's video is we have a VPN user coming from somewhere on the public internet. And he's going to access a Ubiquiti Unifi gateway, which is your gateway that you have for your home lab if you are a Unifi customer. And then we're going to say that that user coming in is on a VPN server in the 192.168.200 range. And when you create a VPN server, every VPN server has an address range. And when you create a client, in other words, this VPN user coming in, that client gets a particular address in this range. So our goal here is I have a whole bunch of VLANs and a main LAN, and today we're going to create a test VLAN. And my purpose is I want them to be able to get to one particular server on this test VLAN, but I don't want them getting to anything on my main LAN, my IoT LAN, my DMZ LAN, or my LabNet VLAN. So with that in mind, let's go take a look and see exactly how to accomplish this. Here we are over on my Ubiquiti UDM Pro, and what we're going to do today would apply to all the Unifi firewalls. So let's go down and click on Settings. When we go into Settings, the first thing we want to do is go over to VPN. And then I'm going to head over to VPN Server. As you can see here, I have 4 different VPN servers, and really you only need one, but I like the granularity of management to have different groups of users using a different VPN server. So I'm going to create a new server, and I'm going to go ahead and call this Test. And so the label Test is just basically for us. And then I'm going to come down here and go into manual mode, and in this case I'm going to set the gateway subnet to be 200.1, and that way it will offer addresses on this VPN server in the 200 range. So 200.1 will be the gateway. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on Add, which will go ahead and add that VPN service. And then I'm going to go ahead and say Add Client. And once I add a client, I'm going to go ahead and type in Scott. And then I'm going to go click Download. And once I click Download, I'm going to click Save so that I have a copy of this particular VPN configuration file. Then I will click Add. Now that I've clicked Add, you can see that the specific interface ID when this VPN user comes in is going to be 192.168.200.2. Now I can click Apply Changes at the bottom, and once that takes place, then I can go ahead and go back here to VPN server. Here's our test server, and then when I click the test server, you can see the Scott user once again. The next step is I'm going to go ahead and head up to Networks. And once I get in the network area, I'm going to create a new virtual network, which means a new VLAN. I'll go ahead and create this one and just call this Test VPN, just so I can remember it. And then it asks for an address range. And the address that I'm going to set up for this is going to be 192.168.100. So remember that the VPN server was running at 192.168.200. This is running at 192.168.100. So now I go ahead and create this network. And now that I've created the network, you can see here that I have a test VPN network, and it has the VLAN number of 2. And actually, I don't like that. I'm going to go back in here and edit this. And I just kind of like setting that VLAN ID equal to the third octet of the address range. And it's just kind of self-documenting for me. So I go ahead and make that change. And now you can see that test VPN has VLAN ID 100. Using the magic of video combined with time travel, I went ahead and created myself an Incus container on VLAN 100. And here it is. It's called my test server. And you notice that device ETH0 is in fact at 192.168.100.182. As of right now, our VPN user Scott would have access to everything on the network. So I want to go ahead and limit that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to the zones section. And here we have all the various zones. We have our internal zones, our external zones, and so on down the line. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to create some rules. I don't want to conflict with my production environment, so I'm going to go ahead and create a new zone, and I'll name this zone test. The reason behind it is I already have a series of zone-based firewall rules that are designed to do things already on my network. So I'm going to go ahead and click this test zone, and I'm going to select the networks that I want to put in that zone, and I'm going to put the test VPN in the test zone, and then do apply changes and proceed. And what this will do is it will go ahead and move the test VPN inside the test zone, as you can see here. I want to set up rules for VPN users, so I'm going to say that the source is VPN, and then if I scroll to the right on that source VPN, I'm looking for the test network as the destination. So if I come down here, by default, if we put something in a new zone, everything is blocked. I want to create a policy. And the policy I want to create is allow VPN user, or let's say allow test VPN user access to test VLAN. And so the source is going to be the VPN zone, and I'm going to pick a particular VPN server, and the VPN server I'm going to choose is going to be the test server. So now I have in the VPN zone the test server. If we match any of those, I want to allow access, and the access I want to allow is going to be to that test zone. And then just to be a little bit more precise, although I don't need to, I'll go ahead and say the test VPN network. And so then I can go ahead and do an apply here. If I wanted to have some really specific granularity, what I could have done is I could have come over here and said IP and given it just the IP address of that VPN user, and then that would be the person that would be granted access. And so I'm not going to do that. I'll go ahead and click cancel, and I'll go ahead and X out this screen. And now you can see I have an allow test VPN user to access the test VLAN. So that means that anybody that is on the test VPN server can get to that VLAN. So the other thing we want to do is we want to block access to all of the other VLANs. And at the outset of the video, I said that I was going to go ahead and block access specifically to my main LAN, my DMZ VLAN, and my IoT VLAN, and my lab VLAN. So these things are in different zones, and when you create block rules or allow rules for that matter, and you want them to cross different zones, unfortunately you have to create a separate rule for each zone. Now I'm going to block my VPN server from my main LAN. So I create a policy and I'm going to say block test VPN server from main LAN. And then the source is going to be VPN. It's going to be a particular server, and the server it's going to be is the test server. I go ahead and click save, and the destination zone is going to be anything on the internal network, which is where my main LAN is. So I go ahead and click add policy, and here, if we look down here, we now have well, we don't actually see that block there, but we can see it by coming up here and saying VPN to internal. And if we click that, we have a block test VPN server from main LAN. So that accomplished that. The next rule I'm going to create will be one where I block the VPN server test, block VPN server test to IoT. And we go ahead and say the VPN zone again, a particular VPN server, and that's going to be the test server. I go ahead and save that, and it's going to be a block action, and it is going to be the IoT network. So I go ahead and add that policy. And then the next thing I'm going to do here is create another policy, and I'm going to say block test VPN from DMZ. And so again, we're going to pick a server, going to select that server, and we're going to select the test server, save that, and then we're going to go down to the destination zone, and the destination zone will be the DMZ zone, which contains the DMZ network. And so I go ahead and add that. And then the final one will be LabNet, so I'll create a policy for it, and I will go ahead and say block test VPN from LabNet. And so again, we're going to pick a server. We're going to select the test server. Go ahead and save that. It's a block rule. The destination zone will be lab. And then I'll go ahead and say add policy. And so you could specify the zone and then specify the specific network within the zone, but for our purposes, I can just specify the zone here. Here I am in Ubuntu 24.04, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the upper right hand corner and go over to settings. And once it brings up settings, I'll go ahead and scroll to the top of the settings window and click network. And now I'll click the plus sign next to VPN, and then I'll say import the VPN configuration from a file. And that VPN configuration is test-scott.conf. So I'll go ahead and open that, and I'll go ahead and add that. And so now I have that test VPN configured on this system. This test machine happens to be on my main LAN, so if I bring up a terminal, I can do a ping of 172.16.0.100, which is my main desktop computer, and of course it is able to ping that because I am on my local network. And I suppose for the purposes of this video, we could consider ourselves to be outside the network, but here we're currently at 172.16.2.49, which is in fact a LAN address. If I go down here and turn this VPN on, it will go ahead and update that, and it gives it the address of 192.168.200.2, which you'll recall was that VPN user's address on the test VPN server. If you'll recall, the test container that I had on the test VLAN is addressed at 192.168.100.182, and if I SSH over to it and provide my password, it will go ahead and log me in. And if I do an ifconfig over here, sure enough, there's the address 192.168.100.182. Now where this gets interesting is, of course, I can do a ping of 192.168.100.1 because that's the gateway address, and I would be expected to be able to reach the gateway address. However, I might not be able to reach other things unless they were on this network. This is called transitive access. So this desktop that I see here has one address, which is currently 192.168.200.2 in virtue of the VPN. So it has the routing to get to the 192.168.100 network, and so it can reach anything on that network. The fact that I can log into this server and then log into other servers on this network is what we call transitive access. So just be aware of that. Now, if I exit out of here and go back to the desktop, if I try to do something like a ping of 172.16.0.100, which is the desktop on my main LAN, I cannot reach it and the ping will simply hang. As another example, I can ping 192.168.30.30, which is a camera on my IoT VLAN, and similarly it hangs. And then finally, I can ping something on 192.168.80.20, which is my website, if I can type correctly, 80.20, and it will hang just the same. So our firewall rules are preventing this VPN user from accessing things on the other VLAN. So the zone-based firewall rules are effectively blocking access to the other VLANs, which we defined that we did not want this VPN user to have access to. Inbound VPN servers provide a very powerful capability for accessing your home lab remotely. And sometimes you want to have someone else access your home lab, but perhaps you don't want to provide them access to everything. Anyway, that's it for today. Please subscribe and like to the channel, and don't forget to hit your notification bell, and we'll see you next time.